to F1 on the Rocks. Sit back and pour up your favorite drink. Hey, we're not the ones behind the wheel.
Hello, and welcome back to F1 on the Rocks. We are back to racing. Finally, my name's Brian Dower. I'm here with my buddy Will Smith.
What up?
What is up, my man? We are back this week. We're going to review the Singapore Grand Prix with all of its rain and safety cars. We're also going to preview the upcoming Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka, one of our favorites, discuss some potential budget cap infringements that we were made aware of last week. The FIA is planning to make an official announcement tomorrow on that. So we'll do some crazy speculation. But before we do all that, check in with Will. What is going on, man?
Not much, dude. It's good to see you. Honestly, it's so good to be back and seeing you and know that we have some racing to talk about because
Amen.
You know, that 3-week break was brutal. Was real brutal. But it's good. Yeah, pumped. I you know, that all that FIA stuff is pretty exciting, you know, especially in that in true typical F1 on the Rocks fashion. We'll probably get that announcement shortly after we finish recording this podcast. So
absolutely, for sure. And
our listeners are tried and true because they stick around for the following week when they know we'll talk about the thing that happened right after we release this episode. Yeah.
All the drivers will be signed tomorrow morning, you know. Yeah. That's how it goes.
Yeah.
But let's get right into the drinks before we catch up on my side. What are you drinking?
Yeah, well, F1 on the Rocks. I went solo rock today in a nice whiskey glass, and I did an Elijah Craig small batch,
nice.
94 proof, and yeah, it's nice. Sips softly. A little bit of ice melt in there changes the complex flavors of the barrel and the oak, you know. And yeah, it's good. Good
Love
stuff.
it. I have got on my side. I'm doing gin and tonic. Shout out to my mom. Beefeater gin and tonic is her drink of choice. So it's rare for me, but I was digging around in the old liquor cabinet and decided to try something different. I'm still hurt from all of the harassment I get for having Tito's every week. So.
Did you happen to have citrus with your G&T, or is it just straight up G&T?
Straight up G&T.
Yeah. You know, the thing about the bubbles is that the bubbles in cocktails actually get you inebriated faster, right? Like
that's right. Yeah.
People that drink neat can drink a few more than someone who's drinking bubbles all night. So, you know,
that's the truth. Yeah. I believe it. So, what's going on in your world, man? How's the week been? Before we dive in.
Yeah, it's good. We have Miss Little Rio is on fall break this week, so we're working with kind of having a 2.5-year-old at home whilst managing all the other tasks and life requirements that are required of you, which is, you know, that might sound like I'm complaining, but I'm not. It's actually a blessing to have her at home.
Yeah.
You know, you start to do something and you realize like, nah, like what she's doing is just so much more interesting. I'm going to go hang out with her for a little bit, you know? But yeah, everything around the house has been good. I'm pumped because incoming this week are two of our favorite listeners. The Parcells family is coming to visit and actually watch the Suzuka race with me and my family this weekend. So we're gonna have a little bit of a party, a blast. We're gonna get some sushi and some sake. We're gonna have a good old fashioned Japanese F1 blast. So you know, really looking forward to that. That's gonna be nice. And all things considered, we've been doing really nice with the weather here, consistently below 3 digits, which is a win for us headed into, what is this, the first weekend of October. So yeah,
that is a win. Now, what time is the race going to be on for you guys out there?
Aha, this is where it gets fun. I've got to stay on the neat drinks, no bubbles until at least 11 p.m. because that's when the race starts. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So we'll be watching the race from 11 to 12, I think, from 11 to like 1, but I think qualifying starts at 10 the night before. I've got to double check, but yeah,
nice.
It'll be a late night, but we've kind of planned for it. So
right on. I'm gonna have to take some serious naps.
Yeah.
It's going to be like 1, 2 a.m.
It's funny because like the poor East Coasters, like you either get like a somewhat reasonable or you get like it's definitely in the middle of the night and you're watching it tomorrow. For sure. Yeah.
But you know what the greatest thing is? And I just learned this from a buddy at work. If you've got an Apple TV, they connect to your AirPods. So I can just lay in bed with the AirPods on. And it's like awesome. Like you get the whole spatial audio thing through the F1 TV app. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, dude. I had no idea. He's like, oh, I just watch, whatever, laying in bed with my AirPods. Like, what?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting turn of events. Well, I'm not sure I would want to stay up that late, but yeah. So what's been going on with you, fam? How's everybody doing?
Everybody's good, man. Yeah, family is good. The girls started soccer last week, and they're pretty pumped about that. Quinny wouldn't let Bridge wash her jersey because it was very special. So it's reversible, so we'll just keep flipping it around.
It's my lucky mud stain. Don't wash it.
Yeah, exactly. I'll have to wash it while she's at school or something. But everything's good, dude. It's cooled down a little bit after the hurricane came through. We had like one beautiful day where it was like 84 for the high, and
Pressure
like
changed.
yeah, exactly. But now we're kind of back to hot and muggy and gross and that whole thing. But everything is good, man. Like you said, it's nice to have some races back again and got some more content to talk about. But before we jump in, have you seen all this Elon Musk crazy shit with Twitter again?
Yeah. So he's popping up in a couple places all over Reddit for the obvious reasons, but one of them being that he's fallen back into the Twitter acquisition deal, which I found kind of relatively interesting considering the stink that he made about not wanting to buy it and then wanting to buy it and then not wanting to buy it, and now here we are again. And I'm like, man, can you just make up your mind already? You're like me trying to pick Thai food restaurants on delivery dudes. Like, I don't know, just pick one,
Yeah, it is crazy, and it probably won't even go through this time either. But and then he's got the tweets about the Ukraine war strategy and all this shit. It's like, Jesus, don't you have enough to do where you don't have to comment on this stuff?
It's my point exactly, right? It's like, you can't even decide whether you want to buy Twitter or not. Please stop trying to tell us how to run our war. Like, we got it, bro. Fuck off.
Right?
For
That's
real.
crazy.
Yeah.
What else did you have in here? You were showing me a couple of these drawings.
Okay, so there's this trend going on Reddit now with like husbands and wives where they both take a piece of paper and try and draw a map of the United States with the states in the correct locations from scratch, like from memory, without any like assistance whatsoever. And they're really funny because they come out super janky and people like have all these states like kind of clumped in one corner and people have states all over the place. And I was like, that's kind of clever. I'm not even sure I could get anywhere close to putting that together.
Right.
Geography's never been my thing, but I do have a challenge for you, Mr. Dower.
All right.
I think by the end of next week, when we go to do the race review for Suzuka, you and I are going to have to pull out a piece of paper from scratch in front of our wives for confirmation and draw the Suzuka track from memory.
Perfect.
So
we get to watch the GP first, right?
You get to watch the GP, and then you can stare at the actual track for like 30 seconds before you got to draw it. We'll make up the rules as we go. 30 seconds. You gotta use your suit's photographic memory to know exactly what the track looks like, and then you got to redraw it.
Perfect.
That's your Suzuka
I can't
challenge.
Wait to see what Bridget comes up with the US and states because it's going to be classic.
Yeah, maybe I'll get some of the crew that's coming to party for the Suzuka race to do it too, and I'll bring some drawings up on the screen so people can see how we butchered the actual Suzuka track layout.
Love it. Cool. So, All right. All that stuff aside, let's get into it, man. The One Breath race review. It is your turn. So any new listeners, every race, post race, we do a One Breath race review, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's one big breath. Give us the quick race review, and we'll see how he does. So we're putting Will on the spot, and I've got my timer.
I've had a couple failures, so there's a lot of pressure on me for this one with Brian, because I'm going to get made fun of if I butcher this one today.
All right, so I am ready. You start when you want to start, and I'm going to hit the button.
I'm going to give you the point because I'm going to take a deep breath, and here we go. You ready?
Perfect.
Go. What a super long, wet one. Reasonable start considering the conditions, but jam-packed with sliding and safety cars and laps that followed the first. Call it what you want, but McLaren and Aston Martin played strategy well, bringing home points for both drivers. Max and Hamilton pushed hard, sometimes too hard, but not harder than the 6 drivers who DNF'd, closing the second-place driver standing by only 2 points. Perez pulled off a hard-held win at the Singapore GP.
Dude, that was impressive. 22.88.
What was the number to beat?
I think it was 22.3.
Oh man! And that was with a pause. I intended that pause purposefully. If I hadn't had that pause, I would have beat you.
That was a ballsy move to throw in that pause right off. Yeah, that was a flex.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I flexed too soon, unfortunately.
You almost had it. You were like 3 words away.
Yeah, I feel like that was a good succinct one breath race review. Like it hit the main things. So if that tickled your fancy, podcast fam, and you're like, that's all I needed for today, see you later. Go check the website, read the blog post later, whatever you want to do. But if it didn't, stick around because we're going to do a little bit of a race review for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that was fan freaking tastic, if I do say so myself. Let's get into the full race review. So starting actually with we'll touch on quali real quick here before we get into the actual GP and the race start. But quali was a little crazy in general, but mainly because of Max. So we need to quickly touch on Max. So Max is starting 8th on the grid because in Q3, he's on his last lap in Q3. He's in sector 3. He's going to be on pole by a second and a half. And Red Bull comes on the radio and says, box, 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 box. Max flips out. And it's because they didn't have enough fuel in the car. And they need a liter of fuel in the car to be tested after the session. They weren't going to have that. And if they didn't have that, they'd be disqualified from the session and he'd start 20th. So weird. We saw that with Seb at the end of the Hungarian GP last year. He got disqualified for that. But that was interesting. I'd never seen that in quali and like just flat out an error on the team, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was the lesser of two evils in this instance, in which the team made a very nice strategy decision, right? Because it could have easily, like you mentioned, been 20th place for him to start from, and that would have been shitty to happen again. But yeah, you know, he to Max's defense, like that was a mistake that they shouldn't have made, you know, and unfortunately it is what it is. I think he was a little aggressive considering it's like one of very few mistakes his team's made all season long. Yeah. But you can also understand that, you know, being just that close to grabbing that title, he's, you know, every little thing matters to him, and it should matter to the team too. So I don't anticipate we'll see issues like that come up again for the Red Bull team, but you never know. Stranger things have happened.
You never know.
A la Ferrari, you know.
And I can't imagine if this happened last year when the championship was close. I mean, for how upset Max got, he didn't stay for a debrief, left immediately after quali. Yeah. Like, not the greatest move, but Max is Max. That's Max, right? I mean, what, you know, he's on brand.
He's flying his own sail, and everybody's just standing behind him, blowing into the sail for him, basically.
Exactly. All right. So now on to the GP and the race start, because this is where the race was won essentially, or lost, I guess, if you're Leclerc. Yep. So off the line, Perez gets the overtake on Leclerc. So Leclerc was on pole, Perez second, Hamilton third, Sainz fourth, just to give people a little bit of context there. They both get a good start right off the bat, but what was the difference there?
So the numbers came up actually when I was rewatching the race in 30 with Bailey. They had an identical reaction time. I love reaction times again. That goes back to the drag racing thing. Like having to leave the line when the light turns off is really cool to me. So the fact that they both had a simultaneous reaction time, letting off the or clicking the clutch and hitting the gas kind of scenario, to me that's really cool. The difference was the 0 to 100 kilometers per hour was reached faster by Perez than it was by Leclerc, which means he was popping through those shifts and hitting those gear spots just right in the sweet, perfect spot for that particular car. And that allowed him to get out just enough to make that first lefty without any issues, you know, trying to turn in or cut off Leclerc. And honestly, from that point forward, that was really what sealed the deal for Perez. And if like you want to talk about it another way, sure there was some strategy in it, but that overtake was the one that took the race for Perez.
Yeah, absolutely. And the interesting thing was all of the odd number grid slots basically had awful starts. It was the wetter side of the track, and which sucks because, you know, Leclerc gets a decent start, and then like you said, that 0 to 100 was where he lost the race, really to no fault of his own. He got on a wet patch, got wheel spin. Yeah. Boom, same thing happened to Hamilton. Sainz got past Hamilton in the similar fashion. And what was Hamilton complaining about the tires? Did he want like a different set of inters? Did he want wets? Do you know what that was about?
There's one of two things that could have occurred. He was caught on the radio saying, "Hey guys, you didn't listen to me. I wanted something different on my tire setup." He didn't say specifically over the radio, but we can make one of two assumptions. One is he wanted to go out on wets because everyone else was going out on inters. Everyone went out on inters. So there's a chance that the team was like, "Hey dude, no one's running wets. Like we shouldn't run wets. You should just run inters." There's also a chance that they changed some pressure values in those tires and the inters that he was running. in a way that he maybe disagreed with, and as a result of that, he wasn't getting the traction that he wanted to. Problem is, he started complaining about that like 2 laps in before like inters on a wet track or even really like in the sweet spot anyways. So I'm like, it just could have been a Hamilton thing, not being happy with what he was given. But one of my compatriots at work also was kind of like, does it seem to you like Hamilton's just kind of complaining to complain nowadays? And I was kind of like, a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, it does sort of seem like it. Yeah. I heard somebody say it was maybe they had a conversation between new inters and used inters. I don't know. Maybe he went out a new pair of set and he wanted a used set because
That's
they
an
would have
option
had
too.
less tread or so. Who the hell knows? But I agree with you. It does seem like, I don't know. He's just kind of complaining to complain.
I mean, at that point, to me, it's like if everyone's on inters, it's equal racing ground. So like,
right,
your tire, whatever you're saying about your tires, it's not about the tires now. It's about how you're racing on the track. So,
yeah, exactly. And then Max had an awful start. He started 8th and he dropped like 4 or 5 places before turn 1.
This hadn't occurred to me until you said it a second ago, but was he in an odd grid spot? No, he was in 8th. He was in an even spot.
He was in even, but he just totally bottled the start.
Was it anti-stall or something?
Yeah, he said afterward the anti-stall. So it was just a horrendous start.
He probably let the clutch and just missed it. Yeah, because I when I was watching the over, they always do now, which thank God, F1 TV is doing the overhead view basically like halfway through the second lap of the race. They go back to race start and do the overhead view, and it's so informative to see like, oh, this person just literally lost the start, or this person knew exactly what they wanted to do and executed perfectly. And that's such a cool thing to see at those starts with all those cars kind of coming into a fast corner. So
yeah, that was wild. The Verstappen start, like, I don't know. I like to think it was a little bit of karma. I'm kind of a Max hater, so like, you're gonna be a dick to your team on Saturday night. You're gonna hit the anti-stall Sunday.
What goes around comes around. What goes around comes around. Yep.
Exactly. So next up were all the safety cars, and before we get into the actual race and talking about those safety cars, if anybody listened to last week's episode, we were talking about Singapore. We were previewing it, and Will and I were talking. We said, hey, there's been a safety car every single year in Singapore since they started the race in 2008. So I'm like, put a bet on it, place a bet on it. So the next day, Will sends me a screenshot of the odds, and the odds were awful for getting a safety car, which makes sense because it's happened every single year. And it was like minus 400 maybe for no safety car. So we're like, fuck it. Do it. No safety car. I'm feeling good.
Very unfavorable odds, but very good odds for the no safety car for all the obvious reasons. There was going to be a safety car. I don't know what we were thinking.
We had like 5 safety cars in the race. So that was a bet down the drain, but what are you going to do? It happens.
All right. So here's how we ended up then, since we're on the betting thing anyways. Basically, what I ended up with, and I have a poor connection for some reason, so this is maybe something we'll have to swing back to later. It's not pulling up my actual bets.
Here we go. Any?
No, yeah, we actually did. Believe it or not, we did win one. So I had a 1, 2, 3 pick, which would have been a $1 wager to win $35, and that was Leclerc, Perez, Hamilton. And I made that bet because before any of the nonsense went down, I was like, this is a realistic outcome to this race if all things don't go too bad. I had a George Russell to win, and that was a $2 wager to win 14. Sebastian Vettel top 6 finish. So darn close.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so darn close. I also had a Sebastian Vettel as the race winner. And here's why. This is where this gets fun. And I know I'm going on a tangent. This is a safety car segment, but I'm taking this away. I got bored in the middle of the week and my wife was out of town, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to watch the 2015 Singapore GP.
Nice.
And wouldn't you fucking know it? Seb is out front like a boss, and he's just defending against Ricky Ricardo all day long. And I'm telling you, like, that race was so fun to watch because I'm like, man, these guys that just, they seem like they're forgotten, but they were so good, man. They were so good back then. And so I was like, I'm betting on Vettel to win this, because if something goes wrong, like, Seb's got this on the lockdown. Anyways, that's my tangent. I had Red Bull Racing double podium, which did not occur, but I thought maybe was a chance if Max could make it through. Then the one bet that I won was a Sergio Perez wins the race, $2, paid me $6. Yeah.
Boom.
There you go.
Boom.
Yeah.
We're going to retire off this DraftKings.
I don't know why. I should just literally uninstall the application at this point.
I know. I'm so jealous,
down
though.
The drain.
I'm so jealous that I can't bet.
I'll be your bookie. Send me some bets. I got you.
I
man.
know. Seriously.
All right. Safety car situations. That was your DraftKings segment. We threw that in there for you. No charge.
We snuck it in. We snuck it in. So we had a bunch of safety cars, and I guess we don't need to go with the safety cars per se. But what I do want to talk about are the 6 DNFs. We only had 14 cars finish this race. So a couple of the quick ones, because these didn't have any incidents involved with them. But Alonso and Ocon both had engine issues, and they were both kind of pouring some smoke. So huge weekend for McLaren, getting the double points with their rivals Alpine getting 0 points. That was a rough one. And Alonso is just, he's leaving scorched earth on his way out of Alpine. So he's now claiming that he's lost 60 points due to reliability issues with Alpine, which might be aggressive, but
it's an important time to acknowledge, though, that like while a lot of people might from the outside see Alonso leaving and go, goodness, why is he leaving a team that seems to be climbing up the ranks and doing better? But dude's been around, like has experience, knows what's going on behind the scenes, obviously sees a lot more shit than anyone else sees. So if he sees something that's kind of like a red flag or a warning sign and he's like, maybe time to dip out, and then you've got stuff like this going on at like this late in the season, then perhaps the Alonso move that seemed completely illogical next season will be like, that was a really smart decision, So we'll see.
Yeah, exactly. And Lord Stroll is stroking checks, so that Aston Martin team is going to get better every year. But the next up on the DNF list is Yuki, and he was on the inters when he crashed. Do you remember?
No, he was on mediums. Yeah, he was on mediums. So okay. He came around a corner and almost put it into the wall on inters. Same corner that he almost put it into the wall on inters was the corner he put it into with mediums, and he was fresh. I think he was fresh out of the pits, or at least like they weren't in a properly heated area for him to be doing what he was doing in that particular corner, which coincidentally enough was the corner that I think 9 of the 10, like somebody bumped into it or went into it. Like that corner, I forget the corner number, was the one that people kept doing. It's like the hardest right. It's the hardest right turn that you have to make, basically. So
and hopefully Yuki got it out of his system since we're going to Japan this week. I'd love to see him have a good showing this week. So
agreed.
The other one where we had an incident, Zhou and Latifi. Latifi, 5 races left. The countdown is on. Yeah. And Zhou's such a nice kid. Even on the radio afterwards, he was like, he squeezed me. I don't know what I'm supposed to do there. And if anybody didn't see it, Latifi just squeezes Zhou into the wall. Like he had no idea he was there. And I didn't see any quotes from Latifi after the race. But it was pretty evident. He got a grid penalty for this week.
Yeah, exactly. It's that issue, that problem that he had is going to trickle over to next week. The interesting part is like Joe's driving and like he's just doing the thing, and you could tell that he was anticipating that Latifi was going to be self-aware enough to not do what Latifi did, but Latifi did it and he threw his hands up, and I was just like, man, that's exactly what I do when someone just can't merge onto the interstate like a normal fucking individual. Like,
right.
God, what an idiot. I think we should make an F1 on the Rocks sponsored social post that just says like 5 more races until Latifi's out of our way. And then we send it direct message to every driver and hope that they just post it. They will never do it, obviously, but I guess.
That would be great. And then Albon was, a self-inflicted wound. But I saw a couple memes with him. It was like, because the camera just catches him like coming through and just right into the wall, like no turn at all. He just locked up right into the wall. And it was like the pinnacle of motorsport, just driving straight into the wall. This is so good.
Yeah. Some of the memes that people are getting really good with these Formula One memes. I got to be honest. Like we've seen a couple this week that I was just like, this is mean, but also at the same time, very fucking funny. Yeah. Albon, if you saw that, though, he came literally off the dry line by only about 6 inches. And I think that 6 inches is what made the difference in those inters actually gripping the pavement and not, in his case, just driving straight through that corner. So
it kind of reminded me of Mick in Monaco where his car like broke in half. He came off the dry line by like a fucking centimeter.
It's the same thing. Yeah.
Crazy. It's crazy how touchy it is. But
Yeah.
anyway, on to the Mercs. And we'll start with gorgeous George Russell. Russell's on my shit list, man. After this race today, I've got a little bit of a rant brewing about George Russell.
Let it fly, man. Now's the time. He's fallen down in the second place standing. So
yeah,
give it to him. Let him know.
So it's a combination of things. And so I worked in the golf business for a long time, and my buddies and I have a term. Somebody's a top buttoner. Right. So like their golf shirt all the way at the top. Like, yeah, that's a top buttoner. It basically just means he's a stiff. Yeah. Right. And George Russell is a fucking top buttoner to the T. And he drove me nuts this week. So, he has a shitty qualifying, but I guess he had a brake problem, whatever. So he ends up starting from the pit lane and coming into turn one. He's coming up alongside Mick and just runs into Mick. He swerves over to the right to make the left-hander in turn one and just bumps Mick. They bump rear tires, and they both got a puncture, ruined Mick's race. And, he's on the radio like, I give him a ton of space. And you watch the replay, it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like,
drove right into him.
You drove right into him. And then later in the race, this is what really pissed me off, is he gets on the radio and he says Schumacher's defending like it's the race of his life. Crikey. It's like, fuck you.
Very
just because you're in a fucking Mercedes doesn't mean everybody has to get out of your way. And oh, by the way, he is racing for his career right now. Like, it's just like the most entitled fucking statement ever. Like one of those guys in school who makes fun of somebody who's studying or whatever. Like, oh, you're fucking trying hard. Mm-hmm. Fuck off.
It's very fucking dangerous if you think about it for two reasons. Number one, it's insensitive to the perspective that he was essentially in a year ago, right? You're driving a Williams and you're trying to prove that you deserve the seat of Mercedes. You're going to do the same fucking thing that Mick was doing. And Mick wasn't even doing anything wrong. He was just driving a straight line into the corner the way that he should have been.
Right.
It's insensitive. It's wrong. I think I will give Russell the benefit of the doubt in the fact that it happened during race. And we know that sometimes drivers just let whatever is flying through their head out of their mouths.
Fair point.
I do think, though, that in Russell's, if there's anyone that should relate to what Mick is currently rolling through, it should be Russell, with being a bottom tier team, just trying to survive, just trying to make it through the race with the car in one piece, So
amen.
And appreciate it.
History is showing us maybe George Russell doesn't have the greatest racecraft, which would make sense because he was in a Williams for 3 years at the back of the field and not really racing anybody. But Imola with Bottas. And how about that quote? Remember after that, he said, Bottas shouldn't be down in 9th in a Mercedes. It's like, well, you're in 14th in a Mercedes, asshole.
Yep.
Perez in Austria, and then Schumacher. It's like anytime he gets wheel to wheel with somebody, he's making contact, blaming them, which is, what the F1 drivers do. But anyway, I'm off my soapbox on Russell, but I think he didn't do himself any favors in my book this week.
I'll leave you with this as we move on to Hamilton. I appreciate you taking the time to open this can of worms up, because I have been a Russell proponent all season. And in this particular race, I thought to myself, nah, not cutting it, man. That's not the person who would have, that driving performance and the way that you acted is not the type of person who deserves to be second in the Drivers' Championship. So find your way back to it, because that's not going to cut it for the rest of the season. That's kind of how I left it.
Amen. So on to Lewis. He did not have a great race either. Obviously he had a tough start. He got passed by Sainz at the start. He put it in the wall and needed a new front wing and got kind of lucky because he didn't put it. I think he put it in the same place Tsunoda did. Maybe not. I can't remember, but
it's close.
He didn't go in as hard as Tsunoda, but he went in with, a fair amount of pace, and he got lucky that he was able to reverse and get out and just needed a new wing and still scored a couple points. But then he had another moment when he was trying to overtake Seb. I think it was on the last lap or maybe second last lap, and it still looked smooth, like Lewis trying to overtake, but he's like locking up. Vettel goes through. Hamilton passes by and then
Max,
Verstappen goes through. It was just like, it was like choreographed almost.
He overcommitted so perfectly that all I was left thinking in that moment while watching it live was like, man, how much was he pressing the brake to just barely not go into the back of Vettel? You know, like it was just so perfect. And you hit the nail on the head. It looked choreographed, and I was like, man, that's just crazy. But yeah, from that moment, I was like, yeah, Hammy's out of whack right now. And not unbeknownst to me what was going to come later on in the race for Max, but I was like, man, shitty mistake from Hamilton, not characteristic, I guess you would say. But yeah, it was not Lewis's best race, we'll put it that way.
Yeah, but in typical Lewis fashion, and I hope this doesn't get us a negative iTunes rating, but in typical Lewis fashion, after the race, he was very straightforward and honest. You know, I had a bad race, I did, you know, this or that,
Made
sorry to
mistakes.
the team, and yeah, you know, and I could appreciate it. And maybe that's just maturity and being a 36-year-old dude or whatever, you know, compared to some of the other drivers. But anyway, speaking of some of the other drivers, moving on to the Red Bulls.
Red Bull Racing.
What do you think about Max in the race? We talked about quali.
Yeah, good. Sloppy though. Good and sloppy. I would say Max's racecraft all season occurred the exact same way in this race, in that it was a wet one where he was trying to catch her from behind, and it felt just a little more ill-prepared than some of his other races. So I think he felt the pressure of having to start from 8th and was forcing things a bit more. So much so that even early in the race, he was making some passes and then getting passed back, like Danny Rick. Like he passed Danny and then Danny passed him and then he passed Danny back. And I was like, why not just wait 2 more corners or create a little additional space so you don't bump and then you're out of the race, risky. He was making some risky moves. So, though I mentioned about the Hamilton mistake where he kind of went through that corner and Max got by, Max ended up making the almost identical mistake a few laps later and had to spin it. And lucky for Max, instead of going into a wall, he had room in a runoff to spin it around and get back on the track in a somewhat more acceptable pace than what Hamilton had. So, it wasn't Max's best race, but the thing is like, he at this point it's damage control for him, right? He just needs to play damage control to the end of the season and he'll be okay. That's how I feel about it.
It reminded me of like 2015, 16, 17 Max, like his first couple years in F1. Like people were just giving him a wide berth, like, okay, here comes this kid, he's gonna fucking send it, and who knows if he's gonna stop or not. Like it really reminded me of that one where he locked up trying to get past Lando. I mean, he locked up so hard he had to go in and change the tires because the flat spots were so bad.
Okay, that's another, we'll get there, go on.
Okay, all right.
No. Okay, hang on. The Lando brake check thing upset me a little bit because
the VSC during the VSC.
Yeah, because there wasn't a real reason why Lando did what he did, other than maybe trying to do what Max did to Hamilton last year. I don't know, but he had to stay above the delta, so he was going fast enough where then he had to hammer the brakes, because I think he was trying to time it the same as Verstappen was. Verstappen was trying to time it. So it was you're saying then in that instance that they were both trying to time the same delta, but Lando was timing it wrong, and therefore Max was also timing it wrong.
Yeah.
It was just a shitty thing because it looked to me to be very dangerous. Like that's the type of race scenario where like someone flips but Max's reaction on the wheel was fast enough to like save him from potentially running into Lando. I don't know. Let's chalk it up to being a safety car incident and being like, great, I'm glad no one got in an accident, but it felt really weird in the moment. I was just like, what the heck? What? Lando? Why?
Yeah, that is so wild. The whole Delta thing in the VSC, like, why don't they just do something similar to like the pit limiter or something, like the pit limiter, you can adjust it to any speed because they differ by track. Like, I don't know. Guessing the delta, like you said, like it's only a matter of time. If Verstappen didn't get his left hand down and get turned out of the way, he could have gone up the back of him, rolled his, the whole fucking thing. Like it.
Yeah, or they make that rule. Maybe there's a rule change where you like if we're in VSC and you're trying to maintain a delta and you want to keep up with the car in front of you, you can't be directly behind them. You need to be a full car's width outside of them. So if that does happen, brake, instead of running into somebody. But yeah. Also on Red Bull, right, we talked about Perez, seizing a great win at the Singapore, but there's been a lot of post-race contention in what was essentially a penalty for Perez, a 5-second penalty. Why did we get that penalty? Do you know?
Yeah, so the penalty was for dropping too far back of the safety car. So when the lights on the safety car are on, which means it's still going around the track, they'll go off when he starts to go into the pit. The safety car, Bert Mylander, I think is the driver. But when the lights are on, you've got to be within 10 car lengths of the safety car. And first, I think it was the first safety car, Perez wasn't and got a warning. And then the second safety car, he wasn't, and that's what he eventually got the penalty for. And then I think there was actually 3 times, and he was fucking way back. Like, it's not like he was maybe he's 11 car lengths or 12 car lengths. He was like 3 corners behind the safety car, kind of gaming the system, right? Because then he could speed up to catch up to it, warm up the tires, and do that whole thing. But I've got a question for you, and I have obviously an opinion on this. So he got the 5-second penalty. He had pulled out a gap of 7 seconds or 8 seconds. If he finished the race with a 4-second gap to Leclerc, does he still get the 5-second penalty?
My honest answer is no. And here's why. There's a couple things going on. Number one, I remember catching, I think it might have been the second safety car. I remember catching a cam where you could see, it was a driver cam for Perez, where you could see that he was up on the safety car, like to the point where he needed to pull left the same way that Max
was
needed
like
to pull left
waving,
of
right?
Lando. And he was like, fucking go. And I thought to myself, okay, so what's happening is, and this sometimes happens with the safety car, is that the driver that's in first needs space, the space that they perceive between the car behind them and the car in front of them, but they can't go past the safety car. So they're stuck. They have to bounce between them. And I think he started to realize that he's like, well, I'll just create some separation. I'll just create more separation, and then I'll keep my tires warm, and then I'll just sprint when we're almost ready to kind of get going again. And so he was I absolutely agree he was gaming the system, and he did it 3 times. And the FIA followed what I think are the correct rules. I haven't fact checked the rule book. Sorry, I don't have the time to do that my week. But on the 3rd time, he certainly did something that he wasn't supposed to have done, and that he was warned about not doing. So he deserved the penalty, the 5-second penalty. Now, here's where things get dicey, to answer your question. If he did, at that moment, when the 3rd safety car released, not do what he was told not to do only a few laps earlier in the 2nd safety car, then why didn't the FIA come over and say, you've got a 5-second penalty?
Right.
It would have done 2 things. It would have immediately informed him that I need to drive faster, and made him make what could arguably have been some mistakes as the driver in the lead. And it would have also informed Leclerc and Ferrari, we should take some risks here. We should do some things differently to try and keep that gap closed, because when they actually enforce the penalty at the close of the race, he will be below us. They didn't do that.
Right.
And so what ended up happening is, I think Leclerc and Ferrari pushed and pushed and pushed, and they were underneath him, and they were there, and they were really trying to get in front of him. It wasn't going to happen. And so they just kind of let it go, and he got away. And then eventually the delta was there, in which case the FIA post race said, you have a 5-second penalty, but you still get the win. And I don't know. I'm on a deep, dark rabbit hole, Alice in Wonderland-esque, if you will. But since that moment happened, all I could think about was like, man, if they had just done what they on lap 2 or on safety car 2 said they were going to do, then maybe the race outcome would have been a little bit different, or maybe the teams would have reacted differently. How do you feel about the way that went down?
I agree with you completely. I think he should have been penalized during the race. And the thing is, I think it robbed us of a really good race, because he would have been penalized like lap 30, I think it was. Maybe even a little bit early, so not even halfway through the race. There's safety cars after that they're stopping and making pit stops. He would have had to gone into the pits, sit there for 5 seconds. Leclerc takes the lead, and now Perez in a faster car is trying to overtake Leclerc for the win. Like, fuck, man, that I think we got robbed of a what could have been a spectacular end.
The lack of the incited stop and go, essentially, is what you're saying is what created a let's just finish this thing. It's late. The timer's ticking. Even my wife was like, why is there a timer? I was like, well, they started the race so fucking late because of the rain. They didn't have all the laps, so they had to just do a timer. And she's like, oh yeah, I forgot they do that. And I was like,
right.
So yeah, that's it for Red Bull. Perez got the win. Good on you, bud. But next time, FIA should figure some shit out with how they're going to enforce things after they give a warning. Because what the fuck's the point of giving a warning if you're not going to enforce it during the race? That's my pulpit, and I'm off it.
Off it. Last thing I'll say, make the decision, FIA, during the race. Don't go through the whole podium ceremony in 2 hours after it concludes. Come out with your decision. That's
we need a little 2021 decisive action, even if it's the last lap of the race. Decisive action. That was a really fucked up thing for me to say, but somebody will get that later.
All right, on we go. We've got a couple more here in this race review.
It's a race, Toto. It's a race.
Yeah, we went motor racing. I do want to talk about McLaren. I'm rocking the shirt. I don't know if you can see it behind my microphone here. But
love the performance.
Yeah, I mean, P4 and P5. Lando drove a great race. Danny Rick got a bit lucky, but that's okay. Rather be lucky than good, I guess. But they held on to the inters. They stayed on the inters. It was the team strategy. It was the right call. They knew they were going to get 3 or 4 safety cars during this race. So they were the last ones to go to slicks. All these other guys came out on the slicks, and I'm sure the McLaren strategy department was saying, okay, boys, hold on for a couple more laps. One of these guys is going to bin it. And I think it was Yuki who did once he got onto the slicks. And then the McLarens came in, and I think Danny Rick came in. He was like 12th at the time and came out in 6th or something like that. I mean, it was a huge jump, and obviously Lando benefited from it as well. But fuck, Lando had so much more pace than Danny Rick.
Yeah. The funny part is, like, I think Lando, like, lap 6 in was like, all right, team, what's the plan here? Like, after the things had kind of settled out, if you will, around the track, and the natural pace of things got to where it needed to be. Lando was like, all right, guys, what's the plan here? And his crew chief came over and was like, we're going to ride these tires as long as we can, basically, is what he said. And I was like, interesting. And that is exactly what they did. They stuck to those inters as long as they possibly could. And then when what I'll call the last safety car came out, they were like, now seems like the right time. Let's go ahead and get off these tires and we'll see how things are going. And that was after what I think was like maybe 4 or 5 laps of informed people on medium and soft type decisions to go, let's go ahead and do this. I think even if they have to struggle for a lap or two, we're confident that now is the right time to pull these out. So definitely got to give props to the McLaren team for strategy with that. And then we should also give props to Lando and Danny, who performed well on both tires through and through. So,
kept it on the track. I mean,
good race.
Almost half the field didn't keep it on the track. So, and I guess we're not going to dive into Aston, but both Astons in the points, I think they finished 6th and 8th, maybe.
Stroll had, and it was on who's our favorite? This guy, our favorite stats man. F1 data analysis, right?
Yeah.
Put out some numbers that basically said that Stroll had like the most average pace throughout the race on the inters. And so it was like, everybody's like going to hate on Stroll, but he actually performs well on wet tires in the car.
He's the wet weather guy.
The knee-jerk reaction for me was like, it's just because he likes to drive at a very slow, casual pace like a grandma, and that works really well for rain conditions. Come on, guys. Who's not seeing this? Yeah, I digress.
I love it. All right, last team we're going to talk about, Ferrari. They did get the double podium. I know Leclerc wanted that win, but lost it in the first 100 meters. But they got the double podium, first one since Miami. And when they wore those football helmets, you remember that? that was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ferrari ended up doing pretty nice. Good points haul, and not a ton more to say about them. I guess Sainz didn't really have much pace. He was a little conservative the whole time. Was getting caught by Hamilton before Hamilton, shoved it into the wall, but. I think if they were on a different circuit, I think Hamilton would have overtaken Sainz. And I think just the nature of it helped him out. Yeah,
and I think the biggest win for Ferrari with that double podium was it created a 66-ish point deficit between Mercedes and Ferrari for the second place in the constructors. So,
oh wow, that's big.
That kind of helped them get a little bit of breathing room in some respects. And not only that, I think that the driver standings, it kind of helped it helped both Sergio Perez and Charles Leclerc pull away from George enough to really maybe separate them, with the exception of like one race. Like it's going to take George winning a race to really put him back in contention for number 2. So we'll see. That I could be wrong there, but I think it's going to be between Leclerc and Sergio Perez for that number 2, which is interesting.
Yeah, amen. So next up, we wrap up the race. We are going to talk about this budget cap news drama. So in typical F1 fashion, we mentioned it briefly in the intro, but rumor came out from somebody in the FIA, must have told somebody who told somebody, that 2 teams are over the budget. And the rumor is that it's Aston and it's Red Bull Racing. Aston is just barely under the budget and seems like a rounding error, something of the sort. But Red Bull is like 7 million over the budget cap. That could be a problem.
Yeah. So rounding, as a person who has worked previously in the audit industry, rounding errors aren't really a thing. It's just kind of like somebody does something slightly differently than you do things, and really the numbers add up, and it's going to be okay, and no one's going to go home butthurt about it. But 7 million is a little bit of a different conversation. So yeah. 7 million in the audit industry is something you go after because it gets you paid. Yeah. I don't know. What do you think? I mean, let's say hypothetically speaking, Red Bull has a 7 million deficit in what they should have done with their budget cap. What do we see happen here? I mean, have you taken any time to look into what the actual rules have stipulated with regards to that overspend?
They've got a bunch of options in terms of disciplinary action. And the important thing, in my opinion, because this budget cap means nothing unless the disciplinary action is strong and strong enough to matter, right? And it could be they're not going to do this, but they could take points away from a driver in 2021, because this was the 2021 budget. They could take points away from a driver, Max Verstappen, world champion, points away from the team, which wouldn't really matter because Mercedes won anyway. They could reduce how much they're able to spend in 2022. They could reduce wind tunnel time. They could fine them, etc. What I think should happen, if I'm running the FIA, I would fine them. I would say, however much you're over the budget last year, you get that subtracted from this year's budget. So I think it's, let's call it 140 for simplicity's sake. Now you can only spend 133 in 2022. And I would also remove some wind tunnel time as well. Like you have to make it hurt, or nobody's going to give a fuck about the budget cap.
That's a very reasonable approach. My knee-jerk reaction is more than yours, even though as a Red Bull and a Max fan, I want a more severe punishment for this. Like I want, let's say hypothetically speaking, we run with your model. I want them to be dropped to the bottom of tunnel time. Like the team that would have had the 10th worst tunnel time no longer has the 10th worst. They have the 9th worst because Red Bull essentially broke rules and regulations that shouldn't be in effect. As I was watching all this unfold, I was like, Toto's making this to be a bigger deal than I think it actually is. I think that I have my tinfoil hat on when I say this. His old assistant works for FIA. I think there were internal discussions going on at FIA, and he got word of it coming before it actually came out. And so I don't know how much of this and the way that this is going to break down is actually a reality with how they're going to handle it. But what I will tell you is there has to be a way that this rule is enforced very, very strictly, or we're going to end up with teams that are just breaking the rule to break the rule in the same way that teams currently throw in another power unit to throw in another power unit, knowing what penalties coming their way. It almost has to be like a we never saw that coming type scenario from the FIA. So that way no one ever wants to see what's coming next time someone breaks the budget cap rules.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that is. I wish I got paid enough to figure out FIA shit for them, because if I did, I would go work for FIA. But in the future, maybe we'll see how they handle this, and hopefully it's a way that is beneficial for the other teams on the grid that didn't break the budget cap rules.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And when I first saw it and I first saw Toto's comments, I kind of felt similarly like, he's just being dramatic about this. But then it's like, well, you start thinking about it. Like if Toto and the team had to lay off 50 employees or something to make budget cap, and, obviously that's not a fun thing to do. But if you think about it, $7 million is 70 employees making 100 grand each.
Yeah.
70 employees, 70, presumably engineers making six figures can really make a difference to a race car.
Sure.
Like that's some fucking serious stuff. So couldn't agree more. I think it needs to be harsh, or what's the point of having the rule?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in any case, we should essentially see, as soon as I hit publish on this podcast episode, an answer to our questions.
Exactly. So, my friend, we are going back to Suzuka, and I see it on the wall behind you.
Yes!
Finally.
Let's go.
Finally. It's
back
been
to Japan
since 2019. We are going back, and I can't wait. The drivers can't wait. That's the best part about Suzuka is the drivers get out of the car. They've got big fucking smiles on their faces. Like, everybody loves the place.
Yeah.
It looks like we might get some rain. I hope it doesn't rain, because it is just such a pure racetrack that it's just I just love it as is. We don't need any more rain.
Yep.
Let's get a nice dry one. And
quick shout out, f1ontherocks.com. Go there. We have a resource that'll allow you to see live weather tracking. So if you want to know what's happening at Suzuka today, go. If you want to know what's going to happen at Suzuka this weekend, tomorrow, go. Just keep going to our website. Thanks. I appreciate that. Bye.
Yeah, I love it. So Suzuka was built in 1962 as a test track for Honda. Mr. Honda had it built. It was actually designed, I think, by a Dutchman when I was looking this up. But it held the first GP in '87. So a lot of people kind of assume it's been at Suzuka for 40 years, 50 years. But they were at Fuji before that.
My birth year. I was born in '87.
Boom. So it's obviously one of the best. They do 53 laps. The lap record, I always have you guess the lap record. Who do you think this one is? It was in 2019. I'll give you that hint.
2019. I'm going to go with Bottas.
Close. Lewis.
Damn.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. 2019 Lewis. But this circuit's awesome. Yeah, for sure. So we have we've got a lot of elevation changes. We've got this section in sector 1 with the S's. You've got the big spoon, and then 130R, which is one of the more famous turns there is. But the track is a figure 8. I'm using air quotes, but it has a crossover, and it's the only one in F1 that has a crossover. So basically, right before you make the left at 130R, you're going over the little straight between turns 9 and 10, and it's pretty fucking cool.
It's so sick. It's so cool.
Yeah.
It's like every kid's dream when you're like just drawing out racetracks on a piece of paper. Like, it's literally your dream racetrack, and It's also in Japan, which makes it so much cooler because it's perfect. It's a perfect racetrack. Anyways,
exactly. And the crazy thing, the original drawing layout for this by the guy who designed it, and I don't have his name, which sucks, but that's on me. But it had 3 crossovers. The original. They were going to build this thing that crossed over itself 3 times.
Yeah, well, okay. Happy medium at 1, I guess, in this particular instance for safety purposes. But yeah.
But it's got 1 DRS zone. It's on the start-finish straight, which I think is cool as well. And I think it was either 9 or 11 World Drivers' Championships have been won at Suzuka, because it's always been late in the year. So it's really cool. They crown a lot of champions there. Tsunoda's got his home Grand Prix finally for the first time in F1, and the fans are nuts. I'm sure you've seen some pictures over the years, like head to toe in a race suit, helmet, boots. Dressed up I was gonna say,
I'm looking forward to seeing like the AlphaTauri clothing line section, where like AlphaTauri just definitely paid for a bunch of people to show up in all AlphaTauri clothes. Let's get a long shot of all these beautiful people in these beautiful clothes real quick. I think would it have been Dutchman John Hans Hugenholtz?
That sounds familiar.
As the track designer that you were referencing earlier?
Yeah. John Hans.
John Hans Hugenholtz.
So is Verstappen going to win this thing? The World Drivers' Championship. So to win it, he's got to win the race and get fastest lap, and then it doesn't matter where Leclerc finishes.
Well, it's a bit more complicated than that. There's a few different ways that Max can be champion. He can win the race with FL. He can win the race no FL plus Leclerc P3 and lower. He can, if second and Leclerc P5 and lower, or Perez P5 and lower, which, by the way, brings up an interesting point. Perez's victory last weekend threw in a whole nother caveat of concerns for Max's championship race.
Sure did.
He can win the race in third with fastest lap, plus Leclerc in P6 and lower, or Perez P5 and lower. He can win if third and not fastest lap, plus Leclerc P7.
You're
and
losing me.
I know, it's fine. I did this on purpose. The point was to just let you know that there's a whole shit ton of ways. My thing is this. I don't think Max is going to take it this race, not because of any of those reasons. I think the natural pace of the season dictates to me that with stringing the wins that he strung to get to where he is now, it's going to take a couple of them to seal the deal, especially with a bunch of teams figuring some shit out, releasing some new things, testing some new things for next year so that they're informed when they come back in. I'm going to say that Max will probably actually bring it home at COTA, and that's a strong statement, but that's how I feel.
It is. I think Max is going to lead every session. I think he's going to qualify on pole. I think he's going to win the race, win fastest lap, and nobody's going to touch him.
I will lock all those bets in for you, my dude. Yeah. I hope we come home with like $300 after these bets.
Amen.
Yeah.
I think it's just too good a story, and Red Bull is going to do everything they can to win in Japan.
Yeah, well, I mean, for Honda, it would be an exceptional weekend. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. I hope I'm wrong, because fuck Max, but I think he's going to do it, especially after the week he had. I was on I was team anyone but Lewis, previous years, and it only takes like 14 races of seeing Max dominate, and now I'm just on anyone but Max.
I'm so over it. Yeah. It'd be nice if we could have a different F1 champion every year and we didn't have to watch someone win 7 back-to-back, but
seriously, that is the truth. So what is going on in Grid Rivals?
Oh, yeah, well, that's a very sour subject for me, because I think maybe 4 of the 5 drivers that I picked were DNF'd within the first 30 laps. I was just like, fuck, I don't want to watch this anymore. It wasn't very good. Let me give you the breakdown. So,
I never set my fancy driver or whatever it's called.
You're down. You're so down in the bottom. No one cares about you anymore. I'm sorry. But there was actually an interesting change. So Drace is still in the lead. He's got 7,170 points. Michael K 981 is in second place with 6,760 points, and Mac 44 dropped from second to third place. Ooh. And so with Michael K 981, he's actually increased his budget cap to 115.9 million, which gives him a little bit more spending power. So as you start to beat everybody, you get more spending power. The more spending power you get, the better drivers you can pick up, the better drivers you can pick up, the better chance you have at beating the people above you. And so with Michael K being behind Drace by only about 400 points, he could, if he picks correctly his drivers for the rest of the season, pull out a win here towards the end. So
they're coming for you, Drace.
Yeah, watch out, Drace. You're in trouble. Yeah.
Look in the mirrors. Well, awesome, man. This was fantastic. I'm pumped for Japan.
Me too.
I don't know if you have too much more, but I'm going to get in my quick plugs before I kick it over to you before we wrap up. But
plug it.
Please
plug it in.
Visit our website. Give us a follow. Tell a friend. Subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, whatever you use, and drop us a quick review. Give us a quick 5-star. If you want to write something nice, great. If you want to write something not nice, don't.
Send it to us in a contact form first, and then give us a chance to reply before you 1-star us. That's all we're asking. Yeah,
exactly. And we're gonna start to do some more live streaming like this. I know Will. I'm gonna throw it over to you now because I know you've got some cool stuff maybe coming up with a giveaway.
I do. So we've locked in both item number 1 and item number 2, which will come at the end of the COTA giveaway. So what you can expect from us is that at the very least, when Japan finishes, when Suzuka finishes, we'll announce on Twitter and social media and in the podcast for the Suzuka review the contest, which is going to run from the end of Suzuka through the end of Coda. It's going to be a short one, but trust me, the shit I'm locking down for the victor of this contest is going to be totally worth it, and you're going to want to get in. So keep it on the lid on. I'm hyping this for a reason. There's actually really good shit that we're going to be giving away, thanks to some of the sponsors that are sponsoring some of the gifts. So stay with us on that for sure.
Yeah, please do. It's awesome. Will was showing me some of the stuff before we started recording tonight, and it is pretty damn cool.
Yeah. Well, that makes the end of this episode for us, guys. We love and appreciate that you keep coming back, that you keep listening. We love engaging with all of our audience members, regardless of where you are, where you come from, how long you've been watching F1, and what really matters to you in the industry. Send us a message. If you got something you want to talk about, awesome. We're still looking for someone who works in F1 and someone who works in F1 logistics to come be a special podcast guest. If that's you, great. If it's not, we still want you as a podcast guest. Just give us a message and we'll get you in here. But that makes it the end of today's episode. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you guys next time.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to F1 on the Rocks. If you enjoyed today's show, subscribe now and watch for updates at f1ontherocks.com and on social at F1ontherocks.
Woo woo!